This video explains some assessment techniques that we could use in our daily classroom teaching learning. All these are techniques that are offline. That means you will not require any digital media for conducting these assessment techniques. So the first assessment technique that we have here is what is called as 1-minute papers. Such 1-minute papers can be used to start a discussion and then continue with your topic. 1-minute papers are also useful to assess students' learning before they exit the class. They help you to check how well the students have comprehended the topic. You can also check their cross-conceptual connections. Students can know each other's views if they exchange their 1-minute papers. The teachers can know the students' views on a given topic. And 1-minute papers, if they are given before the student exits the class, then these kind of papers can be used to start our next class. Here is an example of a 1-minute paper. The teacher has taught the students about school dropouts. Or let us say we are talking about universalization of education. So the students have 1 minute to write a response to this question. How can the problem of school dropouts be addressed? Thus students have a chance to express their views, and the teacher can also check what is their level of understanding of the topic that was taught. Concept mapping is yet another way to assess our students' understanding. A concept map is a visual representation, and it's often used to depict interrelationship between various components of a given concept. Concept maps are good ways to summarize. They are good ways to revise a topic. They also help to enrich the student's understanding of a concept. Then we come to the 3-2-1 format. Let us say you have just taught your class about dyslexia. Then ask all students to write down 3 new facts that they learned about dyslexia. So the students note down 3 facts that they have learned. Next, 2 ways in which a teacher can help students with dyslexia. So again, students respond independently. And 1 doubt that the student might still have about the topic dyslexia. So this is the 3-2-1 format. Here is another example of a 3-2-1 format. The teacher has taught the class about the concept of gender. Now the students are invited to put their responses in the 3-2-1 format. List 3 things you have learned about gender. List 2 examples from daily interactions where you can apply your knowledge of the concept of gender. And list 1 question that you have in mind about the topic gender. So the teacher can use this 3-2-1 format after a topic has been taught and thus assess the students' learning. Quizzes. At some point or the other, all teachers have used quizzes. A quiz can be an impromptu quiz where very spontaneously we put the class into a quiz mode. If you have access to digital media, then you can use apps like Kahoot. You can also give a quiz where a Google form is converted to a quiz. Kahoot and Google Forms will be examples of online quizzes. The teacher can have a quiz where one student asks questions to the other. So quiz your partner. And then you can have the traditional paper pencil kind of quiz where all your questions are typed out, papers are handed over, and students respond to the quiz. 3 times summarization. Let us look at this example. The teacher has taught the students about Maslow's theory of motivation. And the teacher wants to know how well they have understood or assimilated this topic. So students are asked to summarize their understanding in A, 10 to 15 words, B, 40 to 50 words, and C 80 to 100 words. Of course, this word length could vary depending upon the time that you have. Now, all these activities A, B and C will require different levels of attention to details. For example, if you have to summarize in 10 to 15 words about Maslow's theory of motivation, then you have to be very concise and very precise, and you'll have to prioritize what you summarize in these 10 to 15 words. Whereas if you are given choice C, 80 to 100 words, then it will be a slightly longer answer. After the students summarize their understanding of the topic in all three ways, then they can compare their responses with the responses of their peers and thus find out if they have missed out on any vital points. Transferring the concept. We all know that when we learn, then application, applying that knowledge or applying our understanding is a very important object of our learning. Take this example. The students have learned about adolescence. The teacher can assess their understanding of the topic by asking them to transfer this concept or this knowledge of the characteristics of adolescence to 1. Formulating classroom rules for adolescents. 2. Designing an activity for adolescents. 3. Do's and don'ts while counseling an adolescent. We as teacher educators must remember that whatever we teach during our theory lectures is actually meant to be transferred to a real classroom situation. And therefore, giving such kind of practical activities or giving such kind of assessments will help the students to remember that the theory learned in class is meant to be applied in a real practical situation or in the classroom teaching learning situation. Memory matrix. Memory matrix can be used in topics like these. Let us say the teacher has taught the students about the three domains: cognitive domain, affective domain and the psychomotor domain. So the teacher can ask them to list down the levels of objectives. That is, under cognitive domain, they will list down according to Bloom's taxonomy, remembering, understanding, applying and so on. Similarly, for affective domain and for psychomotor domain, there are levels of objectives and these levels will be noted down by the students. At the same time, the matrix also asks them to give relevant or suitable examples for the same. Thus, when you are assessing levels of objectives, you are assessing them at a lower level, that is the understanding level. Whereas when students give their own examples, then you are assessing them at the applying level. Such kind of memory matrices can be used if the topic is suited to the same. Venn diagrams. Sometimes we teach two topics which are similar and yet different. For example, Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning and Skinner's theory of operant conditioning are both examples of behaviorist theories. There could be some similarities in the sense in both cases you have stimulus and response. But of course, there is a lot of difference between the two. So ask students to put their understanding, to depict their understanding in the form of Venn diagrams, where similarities are put down in the common overlapping area, whereas unique characteristics of each theory will be put in the non-common area. Such kind of Venn diagrams can be used to assess students' understanding, especially when we compare or when we have two topics which have both similarities as well as dissimilarities. A chalkboard splash. A chalkboard splash is when a teacher writes a question on the board or dictates the question orally and students come forward and simultaneously write their answers on the board. Alternatively, you could have chart papers at different positions in your classroom and you can give post-it notes to students where they write their response on a post-it note and stick it on the chart paper. This also gives the opportunity to students to read what their peers have taught or how their peers have responded to a given question, and they can write their response to their peers' response. They can say agree, they can say disagree, they can put down a question further, and the peer will be able to answer that question. So this is a kind of a discussion that goes on in a written form, and it is a good way to understand how much our students have learned or to assess their understanding of a given topic. Application cards. Take this example. The teacher has just taught the students about friction, and the teacher asks the students, where do you apply this knowledge in your daily life? Students could respond by saying, ball bearings reduce friction in machines, or tires of vehicles need to have friction with the road, else the vehicle can skid. Even in teacher education, we can think of such kind of application cards. Let us say you have just taught your student about classroom management. Then students can fill in their application cards by listing down how they will use this knowledge in order to manage their own classrooms. 4 corners. In this case, the teacher gives a question. For example, when talking about reservation policies, the teacher says there should be reserved seats for women in education. And there are 4 corners. The students will move to that corner, which is their choice. The teacher can then question the students why they strongly agree, or in this case, one of the students has disagreed. The student feels that there should be no reservation for women in the education system. Then, in that case, the teacher can ask why he or she has felt that way. You can go one step further and modify your given statement and then see where the students go. For example, in this case, the teacher can say, there should be reservation for girl students up to class 8, or maybe there should be reservation for girl students in male-dominated vocations such as mechanical engineering. In this case, the students are likely to change their views and go to some other corner. Once again, the teacher can ask them reasons for their choice. Extension projects, where students depict in art form or in craft form what they have learned. Lap books, as the very name tells you, this is a book that can be held on your lap. Here is a picture that shows you certain lap books created by students, and these lap books contain a lot of information. A lot of foldables are included in this lap book, and when these foldables are opened up, something new, a new facet of knowledge is revealed to the students. Dioramas, collages, posters can also be used for students to depict what they have learned, and this gives the teacher an idea. The teacher is able to assess the students. We all like to doodle, or we all like to sketch. Doodles too can be used to have students express their level of learning. So these were mostly offline assessment techniques that can be easily used in a class in order to have formative summation of the topic that we have taught. Thank you.